DFW FCA's Faith in Sports. I'm Chris Schneider. Welcome to the DFW Fellowship of Christian Athletes weekly radio show, Faith in Sports. Brought to you by the DFW FCA Sports Leadership Camp for high school students, 8th through 12th graders. It's June 28th through July 1st at Dallas Baptist University. As the NBA playoffs move along, we will again focus on basketball this week with two great special guests. First, we will hear from longtime NBA star Atlanta Hawk Kyle Korver in just a few minutes. And then we've got something amazing for you. We will hear the voice of one of the greatest basketball players of all time, the late Pistol Pete Maravich, giving his own testimony shortly before he went to be with the Lord.
I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to call out to, but I called out to God, and I said, God, I don't know that I can even be saved because I know what a sinner I am. I don't know that you can forgive me because I don't understand. But if you don't save me, I won't be around. And I saw the love of Christ right at that moment in my life. God saved me that night, and my life has been changed ever since. It's been changed so greatly, I'm here to tell you. Because, see, the change didn't come in money. Money will buy you everything but happiness. It'll pay your fare to every place but heaven. It didn't come in material things. I've had every material thing you can think of.
More from basketball legend Pistol Pete Maravich later this half hour. Our DFW FCA 50th Anniversary Classic moment this week comes from a college football Heisman Trophy winning quarterback and national champion, Danny Wuerffel.
I think for me, the one thing that's so easy for us to kind of mistake sometimes is no matter where we are or what environment we're in, we sometimes buy into this idea that if you're just a good kid, that's the same thing as being a good Christian. Going into college, just sort of underneath the surface there, and I think that's when God really got a hold of my heart, when he exposed that even in my goodness, I was motivated by fear and worry about what people think and a lot of things that weren't of God.
More from former Heisman Trophy winner Danny Wuerffel in the classic moment later this half hour. Also joining us on the show today, DFW FCA Southwest Dallas area representative Ken Butler.
The funnest part of my job by far is just spending time with the people, specifically coaches and athletes, interacting with them on the sidelines, fist bumping, chest bumping, getting to celebrate victories with them. But also, in times when there's struggle and there's maybe even sometimes tragedy, being able to be there to hug them, to more or less pastor them in a time when they need you. And so there's nothing that brings me more joy than just being around sports and being around faith at the same time.
More from DFW FCA Southwest Dallas area rep Ken Butler in just a few minutes. Now, we would love to get to know you. That's right. We want to connect with you, and it's easy to do. Find us on Facebook at DFW FCA and find us on Twitter at FCA DFW. Our first special guest today is currently one of the best long-range shooters in the NBA. Kyle Korver played his college ball at Creighton. He was drafted 51st overall by the Nets in 2003. Kyle was named an NBA All-Star for the first time last season. He holds the NBA record for the highest three-point field goal percentage in a season, and he set the NBA record with a three-pointer in 127 straight games. Kyle, thank you so much for joining us here on Faith in Sports. So how did you get to be such a great shooter?
I learned at a young age that I probably wasn't going to be a high flyer. So in order to get the crowd going and create a little bit of excitement, I had to learn how to shoot threes. It wasn't something that just happened overnight for sure. I mean, my form has been all over the place. When I was younger, I actually shot left-handed for a while. When I was really young, I was trying to shoot threes, and I wasn't strong enough, so I'm sitting there shooting the ball with two hands because that was the only way that I could get it. And my uncle was watching me one day, and he's like, "What are you doing? You got to pick one hand." I was like, "Okay." So I figured out I could shoot it farther with my left hand than I could with my right hand, so I started shooting the ball left-handed. And the next year he comes over and he's like, "What are you doing? You're not left-handed." I started shooting right-handed, and it just everyone wants to know if there's a secret or a trick, and there's really not. You got to have consistent form, and then it's just a whole lot of practice.
We're talking with NBA All-Star Kyle Korver. He helped lead the Hawks into the playoffs this last season. So, Kyle, does your belief in Jesus Christ affect the way you play basketball in any way?
It does. The older I get, the more time I spend on the Word, and the more time I really try to dig into who I am and what His purpose is for me, the more inspired I am to work harder. It's kind of hard to put it in words exactly unless you know what we're talking about. But it just seems like the more you dig in, the more purpose you feel. The more purpose, I think you usually work a little bit harder. it's pretty easy to feel just kind of bogged down and feel like, man, I just want to give up. I'm tired of this. Basketball for a long time. There's other things I want to do in life. But ultimately, I feel like God gave me a gift to play basketball. And I'm going to keep on doing that as long as I can for His glory. When you're able to focus on it like that, it really makes a huge difference. I think one of the biggest things I've learned over the years is when I'm broken, when I'm hurting, that's also when I'm clinging hardest to God. That's when I'm really digging in. I'm really trying to figure this out. And I also feel like that's also when I'm learning the most. So whereas, you don't always want to be in those tough times because you want to be able to soar whenever you can. And then, it seems like things kind of cycle. Things get tougher. You learn some more. You grow some more. And then you kind of excel again. But, that stuff happens all the time. It's just a continuing cycle. It seems like it never ends.
That is the man who holds the record for the best three-point shooting percentage in an NBA full season, Kyle Korver. Thank you, sir. Next, we will hear from one of the greatest NBA legends of all time. We will hear the voice of the late, great Pistol Pete Maravich giving his own testimony just before he went to be with the Lord. Later in the show, we will get our 50th anniversary classic moment from Danny Wuerffel, former Heisman Trophy winner. Now, you can look great and help support DFW FCA at the same time. Check out our 50th anniversary gear at dfwfca.org. Look for the FCA store. Some great clothes, some great gifts as well. Check it out. This is the DFW Fellowship of Christian Athletes weekly radio show, Faith in Sports, brought to you by the DFW FCA Sports Leadership Camp.
In 1966, Coach Tom Landry had the inspiration to start the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in Dallas. This year, Dallas-Fort Worth FCA is celebrating God's amazing impact on coaches and athletes during our 50th anniversary. Over 16,000 students and athletes are involved with FCA in North Texas. Nearly 500 coaches and teachers volunteer their time to influence student athletes. Visit dfwfca.org for more information, including how you can pick up some one-of-a-kind 50th anniversary products like caps, shirts, coffee mugs, and more.
The DFW FCA Sports Leadership Camp is coming fast. The camp is for high school student athletes and will be held at DBU June 28th through July 1st. The camp objective, to develop students to rise up as athletes and leaders in a Christ-centered atmosphere. Andrew from Troy, Texas, went to last summer's Sports Leadership Camp.
It was just a whole lot of fun. We had so many activities in which we did great services. The sports camp was awesome. We were kept really busy, and it was a whole lot of fun. It just left a fire inside of me. I wanted to go out and spread the word of what God has told me throughout this time. I had so much fun. I can't wait to hear what we're going to do this coming up here.
Former Baylor, now New York Jet quarterback Bryce Petty is scheduled to be there to help coach football. Former Mavericks guard Eric Strickland will be there to help coach basketball. This is for young men and young women. We're looking for student athletes who want to grow in their faith and their sports. Make plans now to attend the DFW FCA Sports Leadership Camp for 8th through 12th grade student athletes. Go to dfwfca.org to get all the info.
At FCA, we're touching millions one heart at a time. Since 1954, the Fellowship of Christian Athletes has been putting the heart and soul in sports by challenging athletes and coaches to impact the world for Jesus Christ. As the largest sports ministry in the world, FCA now reaches over 2 million people annually on the professional, college, high school, junior high, and youth levels. Through this shared passion for athletics and faith, lives are changed, one heart at a time. Learn more at fca.org.
I'm Chris Schneider. Welcome back to DFW FCA's Faith in Sports, brought to you by the upcoming Sports Leadership Camp, June 28th through July 1st. We have an amazing treat for you coming up in just a couple of moments. You will hear, in his own words, the testimony of one of the greatest basketball legends of all time, Pistol Pete Maravich. Heisman Trophy winning and national championship winning quarterback Danny Wuerffel will provide us with the classic moment this week, and DFW FCA Southwest Dallas area rep Ken Butler will tell us what is going on in his busy ministry. Heads up, coaches, if you're a coach, listen to this. FCA has something special just for you. It is the Coaches Enrichment Camp, And FCA camps like this have been taken advantage of by the greatest coaches ever. People like John Wooden and Bobby Bowden and Lou Holtz and Tom Osborne and many, many others. The Coaches Enrichment Camp will be held July 7th through the 10th at a lake resort and spa. It is open to all Texas coaches, married or single. We would love to see you there. Go to dfwfca.org to get all the information. All right, now we have something amazing for you here on Faith in Sports. There are just a few names among the greatest basketball players of all time. People like Jordan, Russell, Chamberlain, Cousy, Jabbar. And another name in that stratosphere is Maravich. Pistol Pete was a star at all levels. He's still the all-time leading scorer in Division I college basketball, despite not being able to play as a freshman. He was one of the youngest players to be inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame, and the Hall of Fame cites Pete as perhaps the greatest creative offensive talent in history. Maravich died in 1988 playing basketball with a group that included Dr. James Dobson. Dobson said his last words less than a minute before he died were, "I feel great." Now, the reason why Maravich could say that is because he knew exactly where he was going. Here we have a piece of audio of Pete himself telling his audience his testimony shortly before his death.
At 14 and a half, right at 15 years old, my best friend came and says, "Pete, why don't we drink a beer?" I said, "No," and he kept on and on. I said, okay, I'll try one. I remember taking that first sip of that first beer of my life, and I'm here to tell you that beer, that first sip, almost destroyed my life. It's only by the mercies of God that I'm even standing here. At 18 years old, I entered LSU. It was a freak way that I entered there. It really was. I wasn't even going there. There was no reason for it, other than I believed it was just meant to be. That summer, I was to go out to a campus crusade for Christ. I was asked to come out there to put a showtime on a clinic. And I said, I'll be very happy to go out there. I took a friend with me, and we had a good time going out, a good worldly time. We stopped at every bar. We took 4 or 5 days to get out there. I drove out there. I chased as many ladies as I could find, and I drank. You see, that was me. And I checked in, and I said, when do I put on my clinic? They said, Pete, we got 1,000 young people here. If you just hold on, you'll be with this group. I said, well, okay. I stayed there 3 days. I never put a clinic on. But for 3 days, I heard who Jesus Christ was. There was no running from it. I heard who he was. I heard what he did. There was no running from it. And on the third night, Bill Bright gave a message. And he gave an invitation. He was the founder of Campus Crusade. And my friend, who was just like me, stood up with tears in his eyes. He said, Pete, I'm going forward. I've accepted Christ. I said, you're nuts. What's wrong with you? And he went forward. And I reached out and grabbed him by the arm, and he pulled away. I tried to steal away his salvation. I wanted him to be like me. And I couldn't understand what was going on in his life and didn't care either. But I flatly rejected Christ when I was 18 years old. I said, God, I don't want you. I don't need you. I've got my plan right here. I'm going to play pro basketball. I've already gotten my scholarship. I'm going to get a world championship, make $1 million. And then I'll look into this. I had everything. I had popularity. I had fame in college. It was amazing. There were fan clubs started all over the world for Pistol Pete. Everywhere I went, everybody knew me. I averaged over 44 points a game for 3 years. The all-time leading scorer in the history of basketball. College, that is. And then I signed in 1970 the largest contract in the history of sports. Greater than anyone in any sport at that time. It made the Guinness Book of Records. It was there for 30 days and somebody else signed for more. But it was there, and I remember sitting there at a press conference, and I remember thinking, I got a scholarship. I got to the NBA. I got a chance for a world championship now, and I've signed for over $1 million. This is great. Now, if I get my ring, I can just stop, go play tennis and golf, and just live happily ever after. But it just didn't happen that way. I was never a role model. Role models today are people are considered because you do something well in sports, you're a role model. But sports does not build character. It never has. Only Jesus Christ builds character. In 1982, I went to bed. It was like any other night. I wasn't in the gutter. I was in my home on the lake. I'd had a home on the beach. I had everything. Friends that loved me. A family that loved me. My guts were tearing out. Where's the happiness to all this? Where's the enjoyment? It wasn't there. That night I went to bed. Things started coming up in my mind. The things that came up in my mind, I'm here to tell you, were perverted things. Perverted things that I had done in my life. Things that I was so sick over. that it just broke me down. And they kept coming, and they wouldn't leave, and I was being tortured in my mind, and I didn't understand why. I didn't know where to go. I didn't know who to call out to, but I called out to God, and I said, God, I said, I don't know that I can even be saved because I know what a sinner I am. I don't know that you can forgive me because I don't understand. But if you don't save me, I won't be around at all. And I saw the love of Christ right at that moment in my life. God saved me that night, and my life has been changed ever since. It's been changed so greatly, I'm here to tell you. Because, see, the change didn't come in money. Money will buy you everything but happiness. It'll pay your fare to every place but heaven. It didn't come in material things. I've had every material thing you can think of.
What an amazing honor to hear the testimony of Pete Maravich in his own words shortly before he went to be with the Lord. All right, coming up next, we will hear from DFW FCA Southwest Dallas area representative Ken Butler, find out what he's seeing in his ministry these days. We will also get our DFW FCA 50th Anniversary Classic moment from Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Danny Wuerffel. DFW FCA is celebrating 50 years of ministry, and we're asking you to help commemorate this milestone by sharing your FCA story with us. We'd love to hear from you. Go to dfwfca.org for all the information and some goodies you might be getting for this. This is the DFW Fellowship of Christian Athletes weekly radio show, Faith in Sports, brought to you by the DFW FCA Sports Leadership Camp, June 28th through July 1st at DBU.
Situated on 330 acres of beautiful natural landscape with facilities to accommodate groups up to 1,000, Lakeview Camp and Retreat Center is the ideal place to schedule your next event. Whatever your group's goals are, Lakeview aims to meet your needs, providing year-round service facilities for retreats, conferences, camps, corporate meetings, outdoor education outings, school events, and family gatherings. Our friendly staff is committed to making your stay a great experience. Come to Lakeview Camp and Retreat Center and enjoy state-of-the-art facilities, activities that engage and rejuvenate, comfortable lodging, and great food in a setting that inspires the awe of the greatness of God. To learn more about this scenic location for your next event, visit us online today.
For more information, visit lakeviewcamp.net.
Earlier this year, nearly 100 middle school student athletes gave their life to Christ at DFW FCA's Weekend of Champions Camp. Next up is the annual Sports Leadership Camp for high school students at DBU from June 28th through July 1st. We are looking for student athletes who want to grow in their faith and their sport. The objective of the Sports Leadership Camp is to help develop students to rise up as athletes and leaders in a Christ-centered atmosphere. Attendees will be challenged and inspired to become leaders on their teams and on their school campuses. Space is limited, so sign up today. Get all the info at dfwfca.org.
I'm Chris Schneider. Welcome back to DFW FCA's Faith in Sports, brought to you by the upcoming Sports Leadership Camp, June 28th through July 1st. We will have our DFW FCA 50th Anniversary Classic moment coming right up with Heisman Trophy winning quarterback Danny Wuerffel. As you probably know, the DFW Fellowship of Christian Athletes celebrates 50 years of ministry this year. Thanks to Coach Tom Landry's vision back in 1966. We continue to influence lives with the gospel in the thousands. Now, if you would like to be a part of the celebration, go to dfwfca.org to see how. Joining us here on Faith in Sports now is a member of the DFW FCA team, Southwest Dallas area representative Ken Butler. Ken, thank you for joining us here on Faith in Sports. So how did you get hooked up with the Fellowship of Christian Athletes? How did your ministry come about?
15 years ago, I was serving as a youth pastor in the Arlington area, and the gentleman that was in my role back then approached me and said, hey, would you be interested in serving as a character coach for one of our local football teams? And I sounded intriguing to me, and it sounded like a great opportunity to be around young people. So I accepted that role and continued on in that role for the past 15 years.
Do you deal mainly with coaches, with the players? How does that work?
Most of my time is spent with coaches. I love hanging out with coaches and just hearing their heart, hearing about their families and all they do, and just watching how they interact with their players. We have some great coaches in our area, in the Arlington-Mansfield area, that really love their players, love their students, and just great to hang out with them and to be on the sidelines and just root them on and encourage them.
So is FCA still an important ministry for our society today?
Without a doubt. I mean, I see it on a daily basis, the impact that we have on our local school campuses, teaching about character, trying to help young men and young women learn how to just be better people and learn that through Christ they can achieve what they want to achieve in their life. By learning to follow Scripture, using Scripture as kind of a path for their life, they can accomplish goals athletically, they can accomplish goals in the classroom, they can, more importantly, accomplish goals of how they want to grow in the person they want to become as they grow and mature in their walk with the Lord.
So what is the funnest part of your job as an FCA rep? What do you love the most about it?
The funnest part of my job by far is just spending time with the people, specifically coaches and athletes, interacting with them on the sidelines, fist bumping, chest bumping, getting to celebrate victories with them. But also, in times when there's struggle and there's maybe even sometimes tragedy, being able to be there, to hug them, to more or less pastor them in a time when they need you. And so there's nothing that brings me more joy than just being around sports and being around faith at the same time.
The other side of the coin, what is the hardest part of your job as a minister for FCA?
I'd say the hardest part is just wanting to do the very best as a staff person to be sure that our coaches, that our boots on the ground, our coaches in the schools feel like they have the support they need to do the best job they can. Sometimes as a staff person, when you're covering a lot of different schools, you want to be able to give your time to everybody, but sometimes we don't have the time to give to everybody like we'd like and get out there in the community and interact the way we want to interact. But the other part of that also would be just seeing the struggles also that our kids in our public schools deal with every day. It's hard to walk down the halls of our public schools and realize some of the things these kids are going through and the things they're dealing with. And, as a staff person, as a person that loves these kids, you kind of carry that with you. And I'm constantly thinking about ways we can practically serve, ways we can help, ways we could do more. And in many of my conversations, some of the things that I hear people need are just real practical things like food and just resources to help kids. And so constantly walking around trying to think about ways and praying about ways we could do more to practically serve our schools.
So if somebody's looking to get in touch with you, they're hearing you now and they're going, man, I'd really like to help that guy out. How do they go about getting in contact with you?
Well, my email address is Butler, Butler, at fca.org. That is the best way to get in touch with us. My cell number is 817-705-6244. I'm always open to having a phone conversation with someone about how they can get involved, whether it's supporting us financially or volunteering or maybe helping support their local huddle at the school close to where they live.
DFW FCA Southwest Dallas Area Representative Ken Butler, thank you, sir. We pray God will continue to bless your amazing ministry. It is time for the DFW FCA 50th Anniversary Classic moment, provided this week by the 1996 Heisman Trophy winner. He led Florida to the national championship that year, Danny Wuerffel. Danny went on to play in the NFL, and he tells us how he came to be such a strong believer in Jesus.
I heard a quote years ago that I started to embrace when I was playing, and it's not that I was a football player who happened to be a Christian. I was a Christian who happened to be a football player. And so really kind of while I was in college, the thing that grabbed my heart was being redefined deep in my heart by my faith in God and specifically what Jesus had done and is doing and will do. So that began to kind of reshape my thinking, my life, my direction, and sort of carried me through football and then beyond. And I think for me, the one thing that's so easy for us to kind of mistake sometimes is no matter where we are or what environment we're in, we sometimes buy into this idea that if you're just a good kid, that's the same thing as being a good Christian. Going into college, just sort of underneath the surface there, and I think that's when God really got a hold of my heart, when He exposed that even in my goodness, I was motivated by fear and worry about what people think and a lot of things that weren't of God, and that while I may have come off looking like a good kid, man, I needed a Savior every bit as much as anybody else on the planet, and grace became oh so sweet. Well, when I came to New Orleans, had a prayer to be involved in something in the city, and learned about this incredible ministry that was in the Desire neighborhood of New Orleans, which at one point was one of the worst-rated neighborhoods in the country and had the second-largest public housing project, and got involved with the ministry there right in the middle of that just to see the conditions in which many people lived and to see what was just ongoing strands of what was very apparently just injustice, and to connect with a very evangelical ministry that was determined not just to preach the gospel in word and to evangelize and disciple, but also to seek God's heart for justice, to do things like start a pediatric clinic and start a school and to revitalize a community. And I remember as I was trying to decide whether to keep playing or whether to retire and what to do if I retired, I would get up every morning, and half the day I would train. I would go work out, run, throw, lift, and then the second half of the day I'd go to the ministry and be there. And every morning I would drive down the road and I'd turn right at the interstate to go work out, and I'd have to turn left to go to Desire, and it just got harder and harder to turn right.
College football Heisman Trophy winner Danny Wuerffel with this week's classic moment. Thank you, sir. Now, we would be honored to have you partner with us at DFW FCA as we continue to touch millions of lives for Christ. To see how you can volunteer or donate, just go to dfwfca.org. Coming up next, we will tell you who the special guest is going to be joining us here on the show next week, and we'll tell you who will provide the classic moment next week. This is DFW FCA's Faith in Sports, brought to you by the upcoming Sports Leadership Camp for 8th through 12th graders at Dallas Baptist University.
Did you know that after a trip to an FCA sports camp in Estes Park, Colorado in 1962, Dallas Cowboys coach Tom Landry felt inspired to use his position as a coach to influence young student athletes? So in 1966, 50 years ago, Coach Landry helped launch the Fellowship of Christian Athletes in Dallas. Hi, I'm Rick Bowles, North Texas Director for the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, and I'd like to ask you to tell us your FCA story. What impact did FCA have or is currently having on your life? Visit dfwfca.org for more information.
Heads up, all coaches. The Fellowship of Christian Athletes has something special coming up just for you. FCA knows better than anyone how hard you work. We know coaches need to be able to get away and be refreshed and inspired. The FCA Coaches Enrichment Camp 2016 will be July 7th through the 10th at an amazing lake resort and spa. It's open to all Texas coaches, married or single. Many of the greatest coaches of all time have taken advantage of FCA Coaches Camps to be refreshed and renewed. Guys like Lou Holtz, Bobby Bowden, Tom Osborne, Gene Stallings, Grant Tapp, and John Wooden, just to name a few. If it was good for them, it'll be good for you too. Go to dfwfca.org for all the details. We hope to see you there, Coach.
I'm Chris Schneider. Thank you so much for joining us for DFW FCA's Faith in Sports radio show, brought to you by the upcoming Sports Leadership Camp, June 28th through July 1st. And remember, we would love to get in contact with you. It's easy to do. Find us on Facebook at DFW FCA and find us on Twitter at FCA-DFW. Our thanks to our special guest today, NBA great Kyle Korver, all-time basketball great, the late Pete Maravich, and Heisman Trophy winner Danny Wuerffel. I'm Chris Schneider, the Sports and Spirit Speaker. You can find me at radioactivespeaking.com. Godly messages with stories from the greatest coaches and athletes of all time. Find me, the Sports and Spirit Speaker, at radioactivespeaking.com. Now, we had a couple of great basketball stars on the show today, and we will continue with a basketball theme next week. Our special guest will be Orlando Magic General Manager Pat Williams. The classic moment next week will come from NFL quarterbacking great Kurt Warner. Guests scheduled to join us in future weeks include Lou Holtz, Tom Osborne, Roger Staubach, Dan Reeves, Mike Singletary, Tony Dungy, Andy Pettit, Ben Zobrist, Adrian Gonzalez, and many others. FCA's Faith in Sports is an outreach of DFW Fellowship of Christian Athletes, hosted and produced by me, Chris Schneider. Executive producer is Rick Bowles. For information on DFW FCA, contact Rick at rbowles, B-O-W-L-E-S, rbowles at fca.org. And remember this week to do all that you do unto the Lord Jesus Christ. God bless you from the DFW Fellowship of Christian Athletes, Faith in Sports.